Can I ask you a completely serious question and you'll promise not to laugh? No? Okay, I'm gonna ask anyways. Why do guns need ammo?
I don't have any ammo.
I might sound crazy, but picture your favorite firefight from your favorite game. You're taking aim, dodging bullets, and ducking for cover. There's chaos on all sides. In the eye of the storm, you find a quiet place to line up your shot, stare down sight, and pull the trigger. That's when you hear the dreaded click.
Click, click! My blaster jammed!
No way!
A couple months ago, my boyfriend made a video talking about things in games that are too good to use. And frankly, I don't think he talked enough about ammo. Every time he has me play a game with a gun in it, I swear I start sweating bullets. And today we're gonna sit down and figure out why. Initially, I took a very scattershot approach of just kind of ranting to my boyfriend, asking if it would be so bad if games would just let me shoot infinitely. My thought process was that there's already so much skill demanded in aiming my shots. Why do we have to add to the complexity by making me consume a finite resource?
Calm your thumbs.
But as I thought about it more, I realized it ran deeper than that. Much deeper.
Deep breaths, deep breaths. We did it. Let's get some more ammo and refill everything.
So anyways, this week we're kicking Boy to the curb and telling him to take a hike, because I got something on my mind and I'm gonna talk about it for once. So without further ado, this is the girlfriend ammo rant.
Haha. Taryn thought she was going to get away with having her own video this week, but I'm here to steal her spotlight briefly. Today's video is sponsored by the folks over at Crystal of Atlan, who reached out to us to see if I'd be interested in making my girlfriend play their brand new game in anticipation of their upcoming collaboration event with One Punch Man. Crystal of Atlan is an MMO action RPG set in a unique Magipunk world, which sounded right up her alley.
Every time she goes, woohoo, I'm like, yep, that's me.
My girlfriend mainly focused on her solo adventure, but the game is filled with challenging team battles and skill-based PvP.
Go blue, go blue. Okay.
I mostly kept her in the dark about what the game was about to get a more honest initial reaction from her, and needless to say, I was not disappointed.
Yeah. And if I do enough damage, I get a glow blue, and then I get to do more power, and I really like being blue.
There are 11 classes to choose from, and my girlfriend landed on the Musketeer, which she loved so much because of their explosions.
You're welcome to my fire.
The main draw for her was leveling up to unlock new equipment and ways to customize her character.
Oh, I love the ponytail.
She played pretty much non-stop trying to lock her first pet at level 26, but at 20 I made my girlfriend go to sleep and had her work on the other 6 levels in the morning.
There's pets. Oh, level 26. Oh, but they're so cute. Nick, at level 26 I get pets.
The One Punch collaboration event is available from June 26th to July 26th, so join in on the fun and see your favorite heroes fighting in-game. Boros will be making an appearance as a raid boss, and there are fun mounts and pets themed after the other characters. So go and download Crystal of Atlan now on iOS, Google Play, PC, or the PlayStation 5, and embark on your Magipunk adventure with the One Punch Man heroes. All the links will be found below, and thanks again to Crystal of Atlan for getting my girlfriend hooked, and also convincing her to rewatch One Punch Man with me for the 100th time.
Nice. My hair looks amazing! He promised he wouldn't interrupt me. Ratchet and Clank is a series that tragically never got any videos made on the channel, but I want to talk about them because it sums up a lot of my feelings about ammo and why it stresses me out. The original Ratchet and Clank trilogy is funny because lots of the progression is gated behind a paywall, which had a very different meaning back in 2002.
Socioeconomic disparity.
What? He hasn't got enough votes.
Working people have to wait for Captain Quark to save us.
Essentially, everyone in the Solana Galaxy is a massive cheapskate, and you've got to pay them for everything.
Yeah, so now we gotta shell out 500 for this guy.
These range from the weapons, gadgets, and perhaps worst of all, the privilege of learning where to go next.
It's got coordinates to a desert planet.
The first time my boyfriend showed me the game, I remember getting frustrated with how many people price gouge our heroes when all they're doing is trying to save the galaxy.
Of course, I'll just need my fee for service.
At some point, I'm just like, forget it. Let the dude die with his infobot. Let him learn the hard way that he can't take it with him.
Unfortunately, this change in mass will cause your planet to spin out of control and drift into the sun, where it will explode into a flaming ball of gas. But, of course, sacrifices must be made.
It's only when you play along with the game and give in to the extortion of our heroes that you start to realize what the game is doing. Very cleverly, it's growing a bit of resentment between you and the world, because in many ways, its central theme is a satire on consumerism. At least, that's kind of the conclusion the two of us came to.
What? Now even the computers are charging us? That's it. This galaxy flows.
The main evil villain is literally a corporate crony in a business suit who profits from polluting the environment of planets.
Using highly sophisticated technology, which you couldn't possibly understand.
Possibly understand.
So condescending. The big moment happened when I got asked to pay for my reward one too many times and stopped to ask myself why we're even trying to save these people in the first place.
I'm supposed to give you a swing shot.
All right, let's see it.
Not so fast. Today, the two of you disgraced my obstacle course, so I am going to make you pay.
I'm not even getting compensated for my work. Not only are they not thankful, but they have the audacity to charge me for going out of my way to help.
That's not fair.
Too bad, life's not fair.
Yeah, so now you have to buy it.
Oh, it's definitely part of the quirkiness of the series, but the reason I bring it up in the first place is that your first time through Ratchet and Clank 1, it's safe to assume that you'll always be flat out broke.
I got some great bargains for you today.
That's way more than we have. So with that being said, the main draw for these games is undoubtedly the weapons. Go figure, nothing beats battling aliens with cool eccentric guns. Generally, if you're not spending money on story progression, it's gonna be on the big ticket firepower.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Easily the coolest weapon in Ratchet and Clank 1 is a rocket launcher called the Visibomb gun. Its special gimmick is that after firing, you get to take control of the missile and steer it straight into your target. I don't think I have to explain why ducking behind cover and flying a remote control explosive is something I'm into. Now, can someone please explain to me why the missiles cost 100 bolts per shot?
That's a real beauty.
For some context, the Visibomb ammo is the most expensive in the game, and the runner-up is about half the price. That's still pretty steep though, as most guns are somewhere between 1 to 5 bolts per shot. Granted, they fire a lot faster and burn through ammo much quicker, but a full charge of something like the Tesla Claw is the same price as 2.5 rockets of the Visibomb gun. It's the steep price that makes using it feel like you're shooting a hole in your wallet, especially when cash is so tight all the time. It reminds me of accidentally sleeping through a lecture and being able to measure out precisely how much that nap cost right down to the exact cents.
Yeah? Well, I got bigger fish to fry.
Bigger than the galaxy.
Well, different fish anyway.
And therein lies the biggest issue with the early Ratchet games in my opinion, which is that it often felt punishing to have fun.
All right. But you better not try to stiff us.
That is to say, spamming the biggest, baddest firepower often busted the bank and left me feeling ashamed for unloading an entire clip of ammunition into an enemy. It's like when you're eating a dessert and you're letting the calories haunt you instead of savoring the taste. Let me fire my big, scary rocket launcher and feel alive. Don't leave me calling up my accountant after each firefight asking if we can write off those Devastator shells as a work expense.
How much?
But that's where things get interesting, because it's in the original Ratchet and Clank of all places where ammo quite literally sucks.
Sweet!
Earlier this year, my boyfriend introduced me to Super Metroid with the intention of teaching me where the term Metroidvania was born. It was a win-win because he taught me about a landmark in gaming history, and I got to play as a hot alien bounty hunter. Get away from the baby! Oh shit, that hurt me. He went into the playthrough knowing I'd be bad at platforming. I think that was his evil plan all along. But what I don't think he was expecting was for me to be so frugal with all of my ammo.
This boss is not difficult, but it does require some patience.
I don't have that in spades. Samus starts the game with her power suit, and in its base form, it comes equipped with a standard blaster that fires small projectiles that I thought looked like lemons. So this is my shooter.
Yeah.
And do I have infinite ammo?
Of the regular shot, yeah.
Oh. The basic pea shooter will be far from the only tool of destruction in her arsenal, and as you explore planet Zebes, you'll unlock all kinds of new toys like missiles and bombs. Go figure, they all have a use and place in the ecosystem of the game.
There you go.
And as I'd come to find out, choosing to not use them in the name of conserving ammo was just making my life harder than it needed to be. I especially struggled in the early game with the hurdle of not wanting to use my missiles to fight things, always preferring to stick with the basic attack. See, and then that's the problem, is then I have all my different ammo.
Well,
And
these
then I
guys
get
drop,
more.
they drop missiles, so I don't think you need to worry too much about ammo.
Most shooters I've played have emphasized ammo scarcity, and so now every time I play a game, I get super picky about firing special bullets. With that being said, the game doesn't fill out your arsenal with equipment just to look flashy. These are tools meant to help you navigate what I like to think of as the ecosystem of the game.
I like how you just super bombed it, like you didn't even care.
I can't even care. Doom, for instance, has a funny ecosystem where it's all about picking the right gun for the job. As the Doom Slayer, Slayer, hesitation really shouldn't be part of my vernacular, but I hate wasting ammo. An important lesson that never quite stuck from Doom was that you can spend less ammo overall if you shoot one big enemy with a single big shot, like a round from the BFG, for example. The alternative is to dump clip after clip of lesser rounds into the big guys while hardly making a dent.
I am running out of all my ammo.
I should know. That's what I do every single time. And it made me hate these larger enemies.
Look at my ammo. I'm just like fresh out.
I'd roll my eyes because I knew I was about to drain a huge chunk of my resources and empty all my basic guns. Lo and behold though, there's a better way to do it. And my internal groaning every time one was on screen was entirely self-imposed.
The blood punch just one-shot Piggy! That is my new way to take him out.
Looking back at Metroid, all of the missiles and bombs are interesting because in that game's ecosystem, they function simultaneously as both weapons and keys. The doors in this game all open from being shot at, but certain ones require different types of blasts. What?
You just need, it all takes all 5 rockets to open them.
But I only have 4 rockets.
Well, these guys drop them. That's why they keep spawning.
The pink doors, for example, require 5 missiles to unlock. The green ones require a super missile, and the yellows take a power bomb. You get the idea. Do I need a super missile to get through green?
Ooh, what do you think?
I can go back up now. The dilemma kicks in when I start feeling like we're in Ratchet and Clank again, and that I might have to come up on a door that can't be opened. Not because I don't know how to open it, but because I don't have what I need to open it. The imminent fear of what might be around the corner makes me want to tighten my grip on the trove of ammunition I've collected and never spend a single shot, because what if I need it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the biggest hurdle of all with spending ammo for me personally comes about every time I miss a shot. It's already a bad feeling when you don't hit your target. Did I just miss? Seeing one less round stocked at the top of the screen, it just makes the blunder sting that much more. I'm not all that confident of a shot, and maybe if you are, you don't feel this way, but attaching a number to my remaining shots almost feels like a mistake counter staring me blank in the face. So how does one work on their aim? Because there's a lot going on. I have to not fall in the lava. He's flying all around, trying to whip me with his tail and grab me and shit. It's this exact reason that I realize the games that stress me out the most are the ones that leave me feeling like ammo is a form of currency. It's one thing when the ammo is just a means of dealing some damage, but when a door remains locked because I whiffed too many shots on my way over to it, that's when I start to get prickly. Shit. Ugh. Be in the lava. If the numbers are the problem, then it must be an aversion to resource management. But spending resources just to miss my target is doubly painful when it's at the expense of not being able to spend it somewhere else. Just think about all the fancy things you can spend ammo on in Super Metroid, and you can see where I'm coming from. In the first Mass Effect game, ammo is a thing of the past. The ammunition guns use is baked into the lore of the world and explained through the use of heat sinks and later thermal clips. Essentially, guns create bullets from within and functionally eliminate the need for reloading. You could fire down range until the turbidity of the bullet manufacturing caused the gun to overheat, and then you'd have to wait for it to cool off.
Whoops. Oh, I guess my gun's overheat.
So how is this explained? Is it part of the tutorial, or does a character tell you or something? Well, no, not quite. Believe it or not, all the info you need is hiding in the codex.
The ammo magazine is a simple block of metal. The gun's internal computer calculates the mass needed to reach the target based on distance, gravity, and
That's so
pressure.
Cool. It's doing
Then
the
shears off an
physics
appropriate size
as
slug
it
from the block.
goes.
A single block can supply thousands of rounds.
That's
making ammo a
awesome. I
non-issue
love
during
that
any
it's
engagement.
incorporated in the lore.
Top-line weapons also feature smart targeting.
That's right. Your girl sat and listened to almost this entire alien encyclopedia while painting her nails one evening, and that's how I learned why the guns worked.
All modern infantry weapons, from pistols to assault rifles, use micro-scaled mass accelerator technology.
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to learn what the deal was and why they worked this way because I really enjoyed the system. I didn't have any comparable experience with a shooting game, and it made me wish they all worked this way.
Projectiles consist of tiny metal slugs.
I
suspended
love that
within
because
a
I've noticed I
massive
haven't
using
had to
field,
deal with
accelerated by
monitoring
magnetic
ammo.
force to
From a gameplay perspective, this meant that you never had to worry about running out of bullets, but rather keep an eye on how hot your gun was getting. Sound familiar to anything?
I sense a connection there.
If it fills up all the way, there's a cool off time where you cannot fire again until it cools back down to 0. I loved this system to death, and I couldn't put my finger on why until my boyfriend so eloquently pointed out its similarities to managing a stamina bar in an action RPG. Oh my god. Has anyone else realized this? Because he said it so casually, I feel like it's not as big of a deal as I'm making it. But oh my god! Ammo is the stamina bar of using a gun. In a world where guns have infinite ammo, you just hold down the fire button constantly no matter what you're doing. I oughta know. That's exactly what I do when I'm on the gun in a Warthog in Halo. While this is incredibly fun, I admit that there's a layer of complexity that gets lost if you're able to just spray a constant stream of shells in whatever direction you're looking. No different than if you were able to spam those heavy hammer attacks without consequence.
Nice, nice.
You got her.
If there's never any drawback, reload, or overheat system in place, then there's no reason to ever let go of the trigger. Always be firing every second you can.
Damn, I just drove straight into that rocket.
So back to Mass Effect 1, the presence of the heatsink creates a constant push and pull between you and your sidearm.
I don't think they're gonna like me.
At times you want to go on the offensive and turn up the heat in a firefight. The irony being that you can't turn things up too high or else you risk overcooking the clip and having to wait for the cooldown.
Good work, ladies.
So instead of constantly laying into the enemy or a boss like Saren, there's an added layer of complexity as you want to time things where you've got a clear shot to lay into him while your gun is fully cooled off.
Nice, okay.
The delicate balance of having a finite number of shots coupled with the time it takes to refill those shots is basically the stamina management of having a long-range weapon.
Come out, wherever you are.
You've got to make sure you have a round in the chamber for when an enemy leaves themselves vulnerable, the same way you've got to make sure there's enough green to lay down a bonk in a boss's punish window.
No, what? Oh, I think I did it too. I tried to go for 2 hits. And I think that fucked me up.
For me, there's just something easier to stomach about a bar than a couple of digits, though.
Let's not start a fight.
Aye, aye, Commander.
Hidden at the end of a logging operation on the planet Eudora, Ratchet and Clank acquire an experimental Blargian vacuum cleaner. The appropriately named Suck Cannon is a weapon that you cannot purchase ammo for. Rather, its ammunition is, shall we say, ethically sourced.
Gadgetron's Suck Cannon can vacuum up multiple enemies, then fire them out as high-caliber missiles.
The Suck Cannon is a unique weapon because it inhales small enemies and then spits them back out as projectiles. The main draw for me is the pull rather than the spit, as the vortex of the cannon turns the small fodder enemies into a complete non-issue.
Caution, enemies must be small enough to fit inside the barrel.
Those pesky ankle biters can be sneaky, and usually whittle you down since you only have a small amount of health pips in this first entry. With no strafe or lock-on yet, it's nice to have a weapon you can just hold down and run in a circle with, to say the least. In some cases, I find it easier to inhale until we're at capacity before spamming the fire button to unload everything and begin the suction once again. It's honestly the perfect girlfriend weapon because it never feels like a waste to use all willy-nilly, and the auto-homing projectiles are just a bonus. I didn't realize while playing, but looking back at it while researching for this video, I think there's a reason you get this gun early on in your journey. My suspicion is that they wanted to make sure that if you got to a point where you were completely out of bullets or ammo, that you weren't stuck with nothing but the wrench.
In case of emergency, break glass with wrench. Hold on. This one says, use rock to break glass to get wrench to break glass to get rod. Ooh, I love logic puzzles. Let's see. If you break the glass with
Solved it.
The planet you get the suck cannon on is only like the second or third one on your journey, and it's a little misleading.
So yeah, you just basically go in a huge circle to get the suck cannon.
Worth it. The main path players need to take to progress the story is actually a full 180 behind where you start. They intentionally have you exiting the ship facing the optional path with the suck cannon waiting at the end of it.
It's funny because like this is what I was talking about, where so I'm facing like you clearly they're just like, hey, go straight, right?
Yeah, that's
But
how they usually do it in games.
There's actually a path. Oh, right here. It's literally behind the ship.
Like I mentioned, it wasn't until we replayed the level for this video, but it makes sense what the developers' intentions may have been. It seems like the player would know to turn around and head the other way if they were already experienced with the game and knew what they were doing. This is the same player who likely wouldn't struggle with running out of ammo like a newcomer might.
Has this ever happened to you?
On the flip side of that, the newbie would unwittingly follow the Sylvan's path and end up acquiring the only gun in the game that doesn't require mortgage to fund using. missing.
I joined the army to get money to go to college. I never knew I'd end up in a war.
This way, if a player ended up getting tight on cash, they could at least rely on the cannon to help them get back on their feet and maybe earn some of the money they were missing.
Oh, that's a nice one.
It's in its own special way a gun with a stamina bar, and you can manage that stamina however you like. Most encounters will have groups of small enemies paired with a single big enemy who can't be sucked. So inhale the fodder and fire at the biggest hazard on screen.
Fill up on ammo before this big fight here.
I can't say enough positive things about the cannon because it was always my go-to during my first playthrough. My beloved. I got stingier and stingier with bolts the further into the game I got because I didn't have enough for an infobot one too many times and was essentially scared straight. Lo and behold, without ammo holding me back, I always had enough bolts to go forwards. I still couldn't afford the damn rhino though.
Rip ya a new one.
What did you just say to me?
But that doesn't matter. Who needs to rip you a new one when I can just suck instead?
Listen, you little twerp. If you tell anyone what you saw or what we talked about.
Do I even have to say it?
My love for the suck cannon extends so far that I distinctly remember sitting my boyfriend down and embarking on this elaborate rant with him. I told him how I'd love to play a Ratchet and Clank game that revolves completely around sucking up enemies and spitting them at bigger ones. You could revamp the entire gameplay loop and let me suck up boxes and decorative parts of the level and then allow me to hurl them strategically at foes. Boss fights could have a big bad that summons small adds or fires his own projectiles that can be sucked up by the cannon and then spit back at him to deal damage. Ugh. He sat there patiently listening to my grand architecture for what I wholeheartedly believed would make for an amazing game, before smiling and telling me I just described the gameplay loop of every Kirby game ever. Taking a glance back at Super Metroid, I really should clarify that it's not a game where ammo scarcity is ever really a problem. Enemies drop more than enough to replenish your stock, and there are refill stations scattered throughout the map that you'll find while exploring. Since there's no form of fast travel, you'd be crazy to not hit up one of these spots to refresh your supply while passing through. Where ammo can feel limited is in the boss fights. There's no way to leave mid-fight, and unless the boss has a way of dropping more, then what you go in with is all you're gonna get. Huh.
The door's locked.
Oh shit. It's for that matter that missed shots in a tough fight still feel bad. But the great equalizer in all of this is undeniably the charge beam. Ooh.
Another power.
A charge beam? Is that yellow? Is that yellow? Is that yellow? That one makes sense to be yellow because they just teased the yellow. Early in the adventure of Super Metroid during a visit to Brinstar, you're likely to find the Charge Beam, an upgrade to the regular lemons Samus can fire that allows her to hold down and charge her attack for a bigger, stronger lemon-shaped projectile. How do I do a Charge Beam? I just hold down X. I think it was maybe the second or third big upgrade I found in my first playthrough, and based on what it does, I think that's what the developers intended. Charge shots can't open any of the locked doors, but are great for taking out enemies. Damn it. This gives you some breathing room to still feel powerful while not feeling like you might run into a door that requires missiles to open when empty-handed. Damn it.
It looks cool at least.
Finding it early on is good because you get some practice using it in battle, and since your ammo capacity is likely still very low, you have a nice method of attack to fall back on.
The charged regular shot, like when you charge it up fully,
yeah.
20 of those will beat him.
The cool thing about the beam is that it stays useful from start to finish in the game. There are several other upgrades for the beam, and although not all of them are compatible with each other, they all are compatible with the charge beam. Yes!
The plasma beam!
Ah! Upgrades like the Spazer, Plasma, and Ice Beam are all useful in their own right, but each and every one is able to be charged for greater effect, keeping the charge beam relevant all the way until the end of the game. It wasn't until I looked back at my fight with the Mother Brain that I realized how similar charge shots are to the overheat system in Mass Effect 1. In this case, rather than taking breaks between shots to let the bar heat decrease, the breaks between shots come from waiting for your beam to charge. I can almost picture a bar akin to casting your line in Stardew Valley or charging up a big attack in Paper Mario, waiting until it hits capacity to fire for full effect. Missing this shot still sucks, but at least I can charge up another one without the fear of running out. Ah! Ah! What the hell is this attack? I'm charge it, I promise! Earlier I mentioned that ammo has some fancy tricks you can pull off, but something else I forgot to add was that every beam upgrade has a secret interaction with the charge beam. Similar to the crystal flash, there are hidden moves that unlock Samus's true potential if you know how to activate them. In case anyone was wondering, I had no clue you could do all this in my first run through, so we're digging into the boyfriend wealth of knowledge on this one. I did have a lot of fun on replay messing around with it all though. So if you have the power bomb selected while charging up your beam, then depending on what additional beam upgrades you have equipped, it'll unleash a completely new charged attack. Keep in mind, it only works if you pair one upgrade with the charge beam. In my playthrough, my problem was that I had them all equipped at once. Aside from the visual marvel of some of these moves, the names are just the icing on the cake. Spazer and Ice turn into Stardust Shower and Diamond Dust respectively. And even those struggle to hold a candle to the Plasma Beam, which turns into the undeflectable Emerald Splash. Even in its base charge form, the beam outperforms the missiles in damage, but in Spectacle, it's hardly ever a contest. Okay.
If you're gonna use the regular missiles, they don't do very much damage at all.
Oh, okay, so charge next, okay. Charging shots and shot cooldowns feel like two gunfire stamina systems cut from the same cloth. In some right, they both ask the player to take a breath between the action and recalibrate. In that sense, they're kindred spirits who welcome the thoughtful player. I know some people subscribe to the relentless firefight of go, 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 and faster, faster, faster. I live with one of those guys.
Okay. Oh, this is the one.
Swing, swing.
Yay! Oh my god, now we can do it again.
That said, the way the other style of firefight waxes and wanes between aggression and assessment provides a savory experience for someone like me. Like driving a car, it feels good to hit a red light every now and then and have the opportunity to adjust my mirrors or appreciate the breeze. Wait, oh my god.
You have 3 minutes.
Oh my god, why would they do this? This is all well and good, but we really ought to address the elephant in the room here. If Mass Effect 1's system was so great, why did they abandon it for a more traditional system in the sequel?
I'll see if I can get some answers when I see him.
Needless to say, my opinion is that the gun stamina system in Mass Effect 1 is the Goldilocks of ammo balance in any of the games I've played so far. Not too hot, not too cold.
You thought you were gonna sneak up on me. That was your first mistake.
It unfortunately seems to be the exception rather than the rule though, as most games don't adhere to the same philosophy. Look no further than its sequel to find the dissonance.
I'm still getting used to the different guns in 2.
So if you're out of the loop, Mass Effect 2 reintroduces the concept of ammo through thermal clips. Essentially, you eject the overheated cartridge of a gun and then replace it with a cool one. And I mean, is that not just ammo as we know it in any other game?
I think that might be ammo. I can't really tell.
In a wild way, it's almost like dropping an empty stamina bar on the ground and loading a full one to skip waiting for it to refill.
You might end up a hero.
In the lore, this is explained decently enough. During the attack on the Citadel during the climax of the first game, the Geth were outgunning the Alliance because they had access to the disposable heat sinks. The fight boiled down to whichever side was able to keep up continuous fire, and the Geth had a big advantage thanks to not having to wait for their guns to cool off. Yes, I read the codex in this one too.
Organic armies soon followed the Geth's lead, and today's battlefields are littered with these thermal clips. They're just all over the battlefield. Who has to clean them up?
So that's all well and good in terms of keeping the lore consistent, but what was the aim of development when moving things to a more traditional system? Surprisingly, I think the answer may actually be right there in the middle of the lore.
A well-trained soldier can eject and swap thermal clips in under a second.
I think they wanted to speed up the combat. They didn't want to have players constantly sitting around waiting for things to cool, or letting go of the fire button as things heated up.
My friends are putting in work.
They wanted a fast-paced firefight that could heat up well beyond the boiling point.
They're shooting rockets at me.
In a sense, ammo introduces a healthy ebb and flow to combat. So long as you need to reload at some point, they avoid the player just spamming shots downrange, but can also comfortably dodge any jarring breaks in combat while you sit to the side waiting for the gun to cool.
I see so much ammo down there.
Similarly to Dead Space dropping you ammo for the type of gun you use to kill something, Mass Effect rewards you with dropped thermal clips from enemies to create a positive feedback loop and never leave you feeling like you'll go hungry.
I want to gather ammo. I hope this isn't like a bad idea. Okay.
It makes sense to prefer a more heavy-handed firefight. Similarly to swinging a giant colossal hammer over my head in an action RPG, having to duck for cover and patiently wait out a cooldown before going on the attack again suits my style.
Turns out I could have bought a new sniper rifle, I just hadn't found the right store. But it's really cool. It shoots 3 with 1 trigger pull.
My boyfriend, who loves to play devil's advocate, pointed out that there's still room for that style of play with the newer system in Mass Effect 2, and I unfortunately have to admit he's right. How unusual for him.
I'll consider it and get back to you.
Regardless, the opportunity cost of not firing when I could be feels much stronger when I don't have the justification of watching the heat bar shrink while I'm planning my next barrage of shots.
I could have just shot these explosive containers, god damn it.
Do I prefer the old system? Yes. But I can also see what they were going for and why. It certainly earns itself some girlfriend favor though, by eliminating the fear of not having enough shots to clear an encounter.
That sounds like a fair trade.
When I initially embarked on this ammo adventure, my goal was less to convince everyone the ammo was bad, and more just to find out why I felt like using it was. I like the fights in games that feel like a dance. You throw a punch, I roll out of the way. I take a swing, and you get punished. All the while, that little bar at the top dictates the tempo. In the same way, a gun battle has its own choreography. Enemies fire at me, I duck for cover. I take aim while they change positions. Once again, a bar is dictating that rhythm of exchange because eventually one of us is gonna have to reload. Whether that reload be a regurgitated enemy you inhaled with a vacuum, charging up your beam in anticipation of a perfect shot, or cold packs you brought along to keep a cool head and a cool gun.
I'm a Marine, not some tourist on vacation.
It doesn't matter how bad your aim is, or if you're landing every shot. Spending ammo doesn't feel bad when you're in the rhythm. So pause, take a breath, and reload.
The thing is, I feel like I've just gotten the hang of shooting while on land.
Sometimes ammo sucks, but on an exhale, remember it's all in the name of fun.
Ha! Good shot.
I want to give a humongous girlfriend-sized thank you to our supporters who help make videos like this possible. An extra special thank you goes out to our six-wheelers: Daniel Rogers, Gizmo, Isaac Vogan, David Webb, Mace, Albino the Infernape, Gray is Sleepy, Shaneboy1888, and Cerberus. If you're interested in more girlfriend musings or just want to hang out, then consider joining our Discord server or even stopping by our Twitch. You might catch us live, and we love when people come say hi. We've got a couple of Made My Girlfriend plays in the works, but it was fun hijacking this week's video essay from Boy. Maybe we'll do it again someday. Until then,